All right, here we go. Good, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast, your favorite cybersecurity podcast. Rolling on with a crew, and it's budget season, ladies and gentlemen. So I've got James with me. We're going to talk about I think one of our least favorite subjects with Ken Foster, and then down there would be Jack, whose last name even though Jack and I are both fellow countrymen, I'm going to still screw up and pronounce. So we'll let Jack pronounce his own last name. But anyway, all right, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having us.
All right, 15, 20-second intros. Who you are, what you do, and where you hail from. Jack, you're in the corner. You're down in the corner. I'll let you start first.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, Jack Korzeniowski. I'm the CISO at Oaktree Capital Management. Been in IT space 28 years, give or take, of which 25 in cyber. Budgeting season, it's year 18, 19 for me as the owner budget, and I've worked budgets from anywhere 100K up to north of $20 million.
That's a hell of a range, Jack. That'll be a lot of good experience to share. Ken, tell us about yourself, sir.
Yeah, Ken Foster. I've been doing this in IT and cyber since about 30 years. Yeah, kind of. And similar to Jack, I've kind of managed budgets from all over, from federal government type budgets all the way up to, personal ones about 25, 30 mil. So it's been all over the market. Yeah.
All right. James, it sounds like it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
We're be all
I don't know. You started off like exciting, it's budget season, and then you kind of went to it's budget season. So it's going to be two beats.
We're going to run the gamut. All right, I'm going to start off with my favorite question because I want to start off in this direction. Guys, it is August. Most of our colleagues are either rolling their sleeves up and getting ready for budget season or already in budget season. Or wishing they weren't sometimes, yes. Do you actually look forward to budget season? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Is it like a necessary evil? I know people are like, I can't wait to get going for next year. And some people are like, oh God, make it stop. So where do you guys fall on this?
Jack, go ahead.
I'll go first. Yeah, I'll go first. I'd say it's complicated, right? Because there's some dreading. Like you have to, again, go make a sale. You have to go show the charts. You have to show data. You have to justify headcount, justify yet another vendor or an increase. And then, of course, there's the ROI question, right? Which is, kind of a little bit different in our space versus any other business units for that matter. But it's also a little excitement because there's opportunity to kind of a reset. Hey, we can decommission, kill some underused stuff, no longer needed. Maybe consolidate multiple platforms into one or two, and actually also reset against the actual risk. Right? What was the risk last year may not be exactly the same in the coming year. The one thing I keep repeating over the last several years, everybody sees security as a cost center. Well, so is HR, so is audit, so is legal, right? So is finance, not sales. So I think that's also from the other side of the table. I think that requires some of the more of a resetting on that expectations to have actually the meaningful conversation.
Ken, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm indifferent, I think, but the big thing about it is I guess it's kind of apropos. It coincides with NFL preseason because we get to do preseason budgeting and figure out where all the hopeful things that we thought we were going to get the plan out and risk, and then we go out and throw it out there on the field, see what happens, and go, oh hell, this is going to be ugly. We got to move to the next thing and the next thing, and I think this is when we start finding out, kind of like Jack was talking about. This is when we start finding out what all our competing priorities are that we may not have had full visibility into, right? So this is where your business leaders, your HR team, your legal team, your app dev team come in and start squashing your budget initiatives, because somebody's going to have to give up something normally to be able to allow another competing priority to take over the budget. So you kind of go through, my problem with it is this is always, I have been at companies where we started it in this time and still did not have an approved budget by the end of the first quarter the following year. Right. So it's just this constant churn and battle back and forth and negotiation going, what are the things that are really going to fall out of this?
How much?
Yeah. All right.
How much stuff actually happens to where you've got recurring things in the budget? You've already got certain tools in place, right? You've got resources. There's new stuff that you want to add. How much of that, like percentage wise, because you talk about, we got to, fight for these different things. Is that just new stuff that you're fighting against? Or
no, not always.
Can you see stuff come back and be like, well, we had this, but now we got to give this up because we need money to be reallocated over here?
Typically that has always come up for me when something happens and go, well, why weren't we, let's take audit findings in a regulatory industry, right? Why did we get this audit finding? Well, we put it in the budget, but it was determined it wasn't important enough, so we cut it. Or we added bodies to take care of this process, or we added we wanted a tool to do this. And those things will wind up getting cut, and sometimes year over year until you get the finding. It's amazing once you get the finding, and I hate to say this, but the only realistic thing that is 100% easy to free up budget is a finding. Right? Once you get a finding, it tends to loosen up some budget and move forward. Some of the other stuff we talk about, risk and all that, no matter how well we are at measuring it, no matter how well we are at presenting it, it's still a little nebulous a lot of times when it goes up. So, it's depending on whether or not the people on the board or the people at the budget committee have the same risk tolerance that you do.
Have you seen, though, where anybody's ever pushed back and said, you've had phishing awareness training for the last 5 years, but we've seen no ROI from that? Like, can we drop that because product needs this? Can we shift? You know what I mean? Like that type of.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Jack go first, but yeah, I've got something on that.
I have, James, to your point, like I was exposed to, not obviously the phishing training. There's another kind of a solution / vendor, right? That was heavily questioned. And that drove yet another exercise for my team, right? Pull more data, get more justification, get more so and so. In the end, it got caught. It wasn't material, for I think everybody's sake. But one thing, I want to go back quickly to is where things get cut, and you're lucky if you're told if it's being cut and what's being cut. I was in a situation where I found out mid-year where cut was made to a consulting budget, and money was gone, and then what, right? So that also, my point is, it's a two-way conversation, right? You a lot of times on the receiving end, but you kind of expect that communication to work upwards as well. And I think where a lot of opportunities exist, right, to talk to the non-techie, non-security people, finance people, and quite often even other leaders, to make sure they understand actually the why. When we ask, do we want to buy more stuff because we feel like it's cool? No, I frankly want to buy less stuff. Actually, I don't want to have 47 vendors and 28 platforms to manage, etc. I just don't. But at the end of the day, we do have to protect the enterprise, right? We have to support business and answer to the regulators and prepare for the worst.
Hey, that's interesting. I mean, that feels very different than I think a lot of the folks that are on the seller side imagine, because I know a lot of us sort of just sit there and imagine you guys sitting out filling out your Christmas wish list to Santa, like I would like this and this and this, and it just we've seen endless reports every year over year from all the institutes and the research places that budgets are going up, everybody's getting more money. IT is getting more money. Security is going to get more money because of AI, blah, blah, blah. But I suspect it's probably less, as you guys have already hinted at, right? Less sitting out making your wish list to Santa and more trying to figure out, like, what am I doing? What do I have to get done? How the hell do I get there from here with this shiny nickel?
Yeah, and two things on that. One, just to go back, I actually had a board member say to us one time, is like, why are we spending so much on security? Nothing's been happening for the last 3 years, right? So they actually said that, right? So it's like, well, that's why we spent the money. But to go back to what Ralph just talked about, you got your shiny nickel, right? But then you find out that somebody else has been doing things, or lo and behold, they've got an M&A plan that you had no idea was coming. So you budgeted out for X amount of growth or X amount of licenses, and all of a sudden you get hit, you get dinged, because why do you need another 2,500 licenses or 10,000 licenses? Why were you not planning for this? Well, you didn't tell me you were getting ready to buy 5 companies this year, and we didn't have that in our line items. So, and a lot of times it doesn't get budgeted by the M&A team, right? So now you're dealing with things that are surprises to your budget, and a lot of times that will hurt another initiative. You may have to push a project because you've had something that the business brought in. And M&A is always a great example of that, right? Because depending on how your relationship is with the board and that team, hopefully you're part of the process. But I've been in places where security was always brought in at the end after they had already more or less made the decision.
Yeah, similar sentiment here. I think we work probably the same companies, or our old company is just the same, right? that's the question. But yeah, it is a game, as I like to call it, right? Of try to hit the bullseye, and it's almost impossible, right? You can probably get as close as you can to the bullseye. The bullseye keeps getting bigger, smaller, depends on the situation, right? Sometimes the bullseye moves. But I think just the experience, having some of the modeling, I think we've done some modeling also. What happens if you don't, purchase X or renew X, or there's something else. I think that's also provides a little more comprehensive picture of why are we asking for what we're asking, and what's the risk, appetite, tolerance, etc. that goes with it, to help us kind of all land pretty close to the landing zone in the other day. But yes, there's unpredictable, right? I'm talking about you have a breach, you have a ransomware, etc. A lot of that stuff is out of the window a lot of instances.
Jack, you're trailing off just a bit because I think your mic is kind of far from you, so we kind of hear your voice sort of fade away. So either yell louder or or get closer to your mic. But point taken. I keep seeing sort of contradictory, right, reports that cyber's budget is growing as a total of the IT budget, and the IT budget is growing in general, but so is the now suddenly AI budget. Do you guys see those two colliding at all? It feels like a bit of a push and pull, because I don't know that you can do one really well without the other, and I don't know that that understanding universally exists along those that sign off on budgets.
So there's some diametrically opposed pieces of that, right? So more than likely your budget didn't include AI yet, right? As the cyber person. Now, are we talking public models? Are we talking internal infrastructure models? Are we building it ourselves? So there's those different nuanced costs coming to it that you've got to talk with the CIO or the business leader. And then there's the new thing, I think, and I'm say that I published an article about it the other day, is we got so much sprawl with people building stuff that gets left. So it's out here churning budget, or has died because the Microsofts of the world changed their API, and all of a sudden your agent was written and no longer works, right? So it's just been sitting out here churning some cycles because it's sort of working, but not doing everything it's supposed to be doing. It's a new form of tech debt, right? We've always had tech debt over the years with the older infrastructure and older OSs. The AI debt is happening faster because it dies off and changes so fast, and you necessarily weren't budgeted for that, or you get surprised with it, right? And a lot of us, the shadow AI thing has been the biggest problem I think I've seen with the budgeting piece of it. You thought you had a plan, and then you found out you had 15 things running in your environment that you had no idea was there. And now how do I secure that? And how do I take care of it? Because once they've got it, it's very hard to take it away. Right.
Yeah. I've learned that the hard way, right? Early on in our careers, we've all said that some developer, okay, fine. We don't have to do security as long as it stays under your desk, is only available internally. After which they turn it around, make it a public server, and you can't touch it anymore.
Is AI, are you seeing a budget issue, or is it playing into budget, the usage costs, even though they may not be security specific, right? Like the organization has all of a sudden realized, wow, this costs way more than we thought. We now have to spread that out across budgets.
So that was basically what I was talking about, is are we using tokens on a public infrastructure, or we build? So if I'm burning through tokens on a public type infrastructure, right? Say I'm using AWS or something like that, and I got Ralph over here just writing away inference all day long, asking it questions, and next thing I budgeted for $5 million in token spend, and all of a sudden I got a $12 million bill, right? Real world examples of that have happened. Or now I'm put it on my own infrastructure and decided, the cheap way to do this, or cheaper way to do this, is to build it. Now I start looking at the rising cost of storage, memory, compute power, heat, power, all this stuff that's happening in the data center, and is like, did I have that run rate budgeted for? So, it's already generated its own buzzword, right? Tokenomics is a thing. And then as I've been talking to new startups, and the first question I always ask them when they're like, we got all this great AI engine that your guys can ask it all these questions and it'll do all these great things for you. And I was like, so how do you guarantee my year over year spend? How are we controlling that? And if your answer is, we just eat that and give it to you so it meets your SLA, so how long are you going to be a viable business? Is the second question that follows up to that. So it's changed the way we think about budgeting.
Yeah. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah,
do you think are you running into that?
Yeah, I'm running into that, and not just obviously from the AI and etc., but even like the infra, right? So I'm close to that space, so servers and endpoints and etc. There's a cost creep throughout the year. Just think all the cost of memory CPU that happened this year. We've seen cost of endpoints go by $1,000 between January and literally like last week. We are in this fixed price, and we budget against for 26, and here we are, almost €1,000 more per endpoint. So that kind of the cost creep. Number one, the unpredictable cost of due to the market conditions, but also going back to renewal, right? I think it's very important for anybody budgeting, if you're planning on budgeting for a solution, the 3-year renewal, etc. Lock your year-over-year increase if you can, because quite often I've experienced once, but I've heard that vendors increasing. You lock yourself to a 3-year contract, and then you get a hit of 20% increase year over year, right? So 60% after 3 years. Man, that's that. I'm gonna raise some eyebrows and start questioning. Is this the right solution, right vendor? Do we need it, etc., right? So that triggers a whole another chain of events beyond your control and your organization. But yeah, that cost creep, it's a must to keep it eyes on. Definitely with AI, tokenomics, 100%. Capping your spend. I know it's easier said than done, but you have to, do some modeling, and at least that gives you some type of a ideal baseline what to budget for. I know a lot of stuff can change, obviously M&A and whatnot, but at least you have to have something that you can start with. Otherwise, the sky's the limit. The way the market's going.
Have you guys found, and how do you deal with like mid-year, suddenly your business says, hey, we got to do this AI thing to catch up with everybody else. We have to do this AI thing. And never mind that, right now it's like, what does that mean? As you highlighted, Ken, like, is it internal? Do we go give Anthropic some cash? Like, how do we do this? How do you deal with that? Because that's you've got an operating plan, right? You've got an AOP that says we're going to do this. If you're a vendor, it's how much cash is coming in, how much cash is going out, how much do we need to keep, like what are our obligations, debt, and all the other stuff that we're going to talk about next couple episodes. But what happens when like mid-year suddenly something happens that requires a significant investment from cyber? Like what do you do?
I think it depends on what the significant event is, number one.
Fair
right?
enough.
So if it's a business initiative and they bring it to you, you should have the opportunity to be able to go in there and say, okay, because you're doing X, we're going to need this much budget to be able to support that going forward, because we need to roll out more agents, we need a new firewall, we need some more tooling, right? Or we need a person to do that. That normally is the easier conversation to have. I think when something goes a little sideways and it's a complete surprise, granted, you may get budget freed up because it is an incident, but that one is much harder. It's much more difficult to have because you don't really know until you get through it and get that built out on what that real budget is going to be. And then the next question you're always going to be asked is, do we need to continue spending that going forward,
Right.
or a one-time hit, right?
Yeah, because I need to show up next year.
You need to show up next year. And so that's why I say it kind of depends on how comfortable that discussion is. But I've also had the ones where, like I said, M&A was always one that, until I got a handle on it at a couple of jobs, was making sure that they had a conversation with us first, because they would come in, and it was even when I was doing some of the IT operations side of it, is like, what do you mean our E5 license is going up by X? Is like, well, you've added 5,000 additional users that all need a Microsoft license, right? So that's why our Microsoft spend suddenly went up more. And oh, too bad we're still 2,000 short from the next tier that brings the per seat cost down, right? So,
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been wondering this because I know back when, 20 some odd years ago, when this was something I had to deal with as a BSO for my business, and then budgets rolled up into the CISO and regional and into the global, and then global went to the CIO, and CIO, I don't know, it may as well have become magic after that. But where's the major, Jack, I'm going to give this one to you. Where's the major contention in budgeting? Is it like at the committee level? Is it at the CFO level? Is it at, at the +1 level, like with your management? Is it in IT? Where does most of the friction come from that you've seen?
Yeah, I'd say +1. Most of the time it's +1, right? Because that's where the initial line of questioning is. And can we do it differently? Do we need to do this? What if? What not? Because then the onus is on them to sell it, if you will, right? Obviously, bringing in for conversation for the right, etc. But that's, I'd say, 9 out of 10 times this is where that first kind of a pushback. Maybe that's a wrong word, pushback, but at least the line of questioning begins, and you have to spend a lot of time to find creative ways go about it, right? Or giving ultimate solution, and this is it or else. Nobody likes that. So it's some negotiation tactics come into play. But in other instances, I'd say make friends with your CFO, and I mean it, right? I've run to CFOs where giving them the why in their language helps tremendously. It doesn't always make the sell. You don't always close the sell, but it helps them to kind of formalize potential solution. Like, you may not get everything up front, but hey, can we do it partially? Can we scale down, or can we wait till next quarter, etc. Right? So there's some flexibility at that level. Yeah.
Ken, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so the +1 is normally the first place that I would always have questions. Typically, though, what I would try to do is work with not only my +1, but normally my peer group that all report to that +1. And we would have negotiations on, hey, if you will help me pay for X out of your budget because you've got to do this initiative and I need to do the initiative. So we would try to work together to come up with, hey, if we do this, because we would have the strategy planned out that this is how this makes us all more efficient. And maybe the one thing that you never like to say publicly, but there's always the conversation, is, does it reduce the number of headcount or change that if I do these things?
Yeah.
At a certain level, you're going to have those conversations, and you're going to have those conversations, because if you're automating or using AI now, or you're changing the way we do something, or you're relieving stress off of another team, that's always part of the conversation. So if you go into it already having that negotiation, then the +1 can bring that top down to what he knows he's going to have to negotiate against, and you can go in with a unified strategy, basically, that everybody's agreed on, so you don't get submarined by somebody who wasn't aware of what you were putting forward. Because that's typically where I've found you get hurt, is that if you've got a peer or a +1, or that +1's peer has a competing priority that everybody wasn't aware of. These are absolute non-negotiables that we have to go forward with if we want to be able to do this. Making sure everybody's ahead of that before it gets to the board level budget committee, a lot of times will keep you from getting surprised and getting submarined.
I was going to say, like, at what point, how much are you doing working with your peers, if you're talking CIO, CTO, others around that have a pretty direct line to what your budget is, right? I mean, how many security tools are tied directly to asset count? And, like,
A lot of
hey, they're going up by, 5,000 assets. That's going to change our budget completely, and we have no control over that.
I would say if you're in the CISO seat right now and you're not tied at the hip with those folks having those discussions, and you're part of their planning process, you're in trouble when it comes to a budget standpoint, right? Because it is tied hip to hip. The other thing you got to think about that we haven't talked about, right, is resource demand on those other teams. Because rarely is the security team alone responsible for deploying those agents or those devices of applications across the infrastructure or across the environment. They're going to need resources from probably the IT team or the app dev team that's got to roll out some code change, or it's going to change the way they deploy software. So if you don't have agreement and buy-in across that, you're fighting a losing battle, because the first thing they're going to say is, you're putting undue stress and cost on my resources that I wasn't budgeted for, and you're causing us to deliver slower. Delivery is going down, operational efficiency is going down, operational spend's going up. So you got to look at all. If you don't have those discussions and negotiations ahead of time, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Ken, that reminds me of several projects in the last 3, 4, 5 years where the C-suite in the CISO budget approved something that the CISO wanted, but it needed to have his peer group's approval because it had an interconnect and a staff requirement that the CISO didn't have, simply wasn't in their purview. And it wasn't adequately planned for, and man, did that get ugly fast. So that's case in point what you're talking about.
Let's think about an EDR, right?
Yeah.
An EDR is probably going to require an agent that's going to have to be pushed. It's going to have to be maintained and kept up to date every time a new version comes out. There's an operational workload that comes with that does not belong to the cyber team, right? It belongs fully in the IT team. And if you haven't prepared them for that workload that's coming at them and the rapid change that it's going to happen, you are doing nothing but making yourself an enemy. So,
resource planning, right? I think some orgs are better than others in this space, because I was in an org where we literally would have a Q4. You already had your projects, right, and anything new for next fiscal year ready, and it was a 2-day in a conference room where you had rep from every critical team, and you go front center, spell out your case, what is the project, what are you doing, what's the impact, etc., and then who you're gonna need. And those folks had to actually take a note down, commit resources to it, and then also work with you on the timing, right? Because just because you could get 4 out of 6 people on Q1, you had to plan for the other to work around their schedules and their resource availability, right? And that's a critical thing, because that can make it or break it, and that can really leave lasting impression on your team, on the other team, for that sake. Because the same thing would apply to other teams. They would go front center and say what they try to do, like network team, and the insecurity support, firewall work, etc., right? So I think that's that's a well-run organization if you have that in place, because again, that can really damage your brand, your team, right, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Do those become though, like they seem less of, some of that stuff seems less of budget discussion, just more of like just project planning of like, I need buy-in that you guys are willing to do. Like, take budget even out of it. We need to deploy EDR. We need to deploy anti-ransomware. We need to do IAM. Like all these things of, can we get the buy-in of the project at first? Because so much of it is done outside the security
Well,
team.
you're right, but let's say that they're not resourced to take on a new tool that they're now going to have to keep up to date, right? And they've got competing priorities. So now what we're talking about is maybe it's not their internal team, but it is the professional services that is going to be to set it up and get it deployed. But then there's years, what's year 2, 3 cost? Right? What is it going to keep it operational, right? So more than likely that's somewhere between, let's call it 20 to 30% of the original project cost is going to be the long-term run rate, right? And if you're not having that kind of discussion and go, well, we weren't resourced for this, so are we going to need an outside party to manage this for us going forward, or do we need help every time? Every time a change comes out and we've got to redeploy this, do we need to drop in a team to come in and help do this? And what's that going to cost us every time we do this?
Yeah, to your point, if you need external resource, well, that's another line budget that you have to fight for, right? The worst can happen, you don't get money for that, and the other teams cannot fit you into their busy schedule for next year. The best case scenario, you deploy in the last quarter. The worst case scenario is you roll into next year with a solution that you purchase, you spend money on, and it's not deployed, right? I saw that happen once. Not a good look.
Yeah.
No. All right. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds on the kind of the last question, because I think this is an important one. I've been in a position where, advising a security lead on how to build, like what to look at, what to build, what to add in, what to consolidate, that kind of thing. But how can your tech partners, how can your vendors, your advisors, your consultants be better partners for you when it comes to like actually getting a budget passed, getting things done? Give me like the 30-second version of just a bullet point. What do you think in order of importance they can do to help you?
Jack, you want to go?
Yeah, I would say so. So the one I mentioned at the beginning early on was, multi-year pricing predictability. I think that's important. That allows you to kind of lock in that price. Yes, there's small amount, most likely year over year, but at least you already can plan budget, for those items at least 3 years in, which is awesome. Also, licensing, right? Sometimes you cannot roll everything out to 5,000 people in Q1. You may, wait till Q2, Q3, Q4, maybe some phase licensing. If you can, right? If you can have the capability, do it. Let's purchase X, Y, purchase X this time of the year and add on later in the year. That also helps with some of the financial strain when it goes back to the finance. Also, I would say a lot of vendors, tell us what's on the roadmap. If you're planning consolidating some tools, some capabilities, tell us, right? So we can also plan accordingly. Quite often I find myself in the situation where we spent X and we're told, well, but if you did that, then you will save money on this kind of out here. Be honest, be upfront, right? Because that builds the trust, builds the long-term relationship, I think, for everybody involved, because it just doesn't leave a good taste when you find out you literally missed on something that it was there, you just didn't ask.
Ken?
I mean, I'm going to agree with a lot of what Jack said. That lock-in of price increase over the period of the contract is super important, because I want to be locked in for a predictor. Even if there is going to be a 3% increase over the life of the contract, it stays at 3%. That year 2, yeah. I don't all of a sudden get a 20% price increase that we've seen happen with some vendors out there, right?
50%.
Yeah, 50%, or another great point is roadmap items. If we've talked about a roadmap item that says when this gets GA, it's going to help you because it's going to make you more efficient, that's covered in the license, not, to get that, now you need to do this uplift, right? And then I think there's the regular, just make sure we never get a surprise true up. And that is regular touch points, regular QBRs, regular discussion about growth and planning, and making sure that, our old favorite sim out there in the planet is like, what do you mean I'm going through this much data now, right? Because everybody's decided, let's put everything in it, right? And now we've got this massive consumption and storage bill that goes along with it. So, and then I think the other thing, the vendors, the biggest thing I can say from the vendor side that is, I've been preaching it for a long time, and now I'm on that side, but it's make sure I understand the total cost of ownership and where the actual return on investment happens. Help me plan that out. Help me look at it, because it may be 2.5 years into the project before I start seeing the real ROI, right? But because I've been able to decrease workload, I've been able to increase efficiency, you can model that out and put math behind it. So help me do that, because the other thing that's helping me do is sell it internally. You're helping me build my story and my package for me to go sell this strategy internally and why it's important.
Okay. Well, that's a great place to end it. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Back to the mines for you and back to putting together budgets, I guess. I wish you luck. And I appreciate you sharing some time with our audience. Folks, thanks for joining us and thanks for listening. This has been another episode of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks to Ken. Thanks to Jack. Folks, we're out. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.